So the way that it works is I like to do a weekly stream, sometimes bi-weekly, to help further the knowledge when it comes to Pokemon Unite. So far we've done emblems, which is the first one, which I got inspired by. I thought emblems were very confusing. Took the knowledge from emblems and I was like, you know what? There's a lot of questions about held items. So we did that. When we talked about held items and EXP share, people started talking a lot about, okay, but how do the neutrals work? So we did a whole stream, a whole university segment on neutrals. But for this week, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Instead of going through game mechanics and how the game itself works, I wanted both the Twitch and YouTube audience to have a better understanding of the world's teams and the world's part of Pokemon Unite that's coming up. So for those of you that don't know, August 19th and August 20th, Pokemon Unite's featured at the annual Pokemon Worlds event. It's an international competition event I would have loved to participate in, but as most of you guys know, my team and we ended up falling short. That's all in the past though. I want to go through every single team that qualified for Worlds. I want to give you guys a better understanding. And ultimately what I want to equip you guys and myself with is the ability to pick some favorites that we want, whether it's teams that we like, personalities that we like, whatever it is. I want you guys to be able to say like, hey, I recognize these teams at least just in part by Inder University. So let's get started. Don't want to waste any time here. Let's take a look at our groups. We've got 4 groups, 4 teams in each group. Roughly the way that the format will work is 2 teams from each group will make it out to the main event. So unfortunately, half of the teams are going to get cut pretty much out of the start, out of the gates. And that's just how group stages work. They can be very, very unforgiving. When I look at the rosters here across the board, I see very competitive groups. See a lot of good teams. Teams you guys may recognize more in the West might be Blackhand and IX from NA, or Nouns, formerly Random Gaming, or Apprentice from EU. You might be familiar with XIS, which is Baby Mazo's team in Brazil. Stamina is an organization that's been around multiple different mobile esports. QLASH is also a team you might recognize because they've played against NA teams before. And if you want to look towards the eastern side, Secret Ship and T2, some names you might recognize from Japan. And then Revenant being your India representation, ICLEN from OCE, Renaissance, Eternity, No Show, No Lucario. All these teams pretty recognizable within their own niches, and a lot to talk about. So before I get started, it's really important to me that I do give a shout out to everyone that makes these presentations possible. For this presentation in particular, MathCord wasn't as relied upon because a lot of this knowledge I have internally, but you know, they've been a part of these presentations since the start, so always want to give a nod to them. Big shout out to Palace Blue, my girlfriend. She made this presentation look a lot more presentable, helped me sort out the logos for the teams, any of the visuals we see, all thanks to her. And for the first time, the mod team, all of them that were involved within this project, every single one of the mods, they came together, put together a very helpful document for me, linking me to all the matches, giving me a bunch of information and basic rundowns on every team, because truthfully, it's very hard to scout 16 teams in a week. But they all came together, they took their responsibilities, and they got that done for me as well. So huge shout out to everyone involved. Obviously, I can't do this on my own. If you ever want to spend time with me personally and get some coaching done, I've got Metafy. It's in the description of every YouTube video. You can find it in the Twitch chat or in my Twitch bio. I'm probably not going to be doing any coaching until after World, just because of how busy I am. But if you ever need or want to spend one-on-one time with me to improve your game, you can find me there. So we're going to get started with Group A. And I know one thing before we get started with all the teams there are some teams, I think from South America, and I did see this mentioned as well, that might not be able to attend because of visa issues. Whatever it might be, these 16 teams are the ones that qualified. So whether or not they actually get there, I'm going to leave that to chance and fate and whatever that might be. They still deserve to be represented, at least within the content that I'm making. So If they don't end up making it, which, you know, might be the case for some teams, it's really, really unfortunate. I don't know how it's going to be handled, but let's still give them a nod to their performance and how they got to where they got to. So we'll get started with Secret Ship, your team coming out of Japan. When it comes to Japan, this region is a little bit weird in terms of the teams that made it out. A lot of you, including myself, probably would have expected what I believe the team name to be the Rentaro or Renbaro Pirates make it through, with P and Sui and some players that I've interacted with. And truthfully, I thought they did qualify, actually. That's how out of the loop I was for a while. But all that being said, Secret Ship coming through with their first major win in an official tournament. They were top 4 throughout the year. They got top 8 in the AOS Cup. They never actually won a single tournament in UCS, but they ended up making it through the regional finals, and they are the team that are going to be representing Japan, one of the 2 teams. One of the things that I really want you guys to pay attention to, and I'm going to show you in a video as well, is that this team does not rely on Blissey whatsoever. You're going to see a lot of these teams, the basic rundown of every composition is Blissey Hoopa as your support tank combination. And then you add in, usually for a lot of teams, it's Serena, maybe Lucario as like your top lane bruiser anchor that exists in that top lane, sometimes in the bottom lane, but this like team fight bruiser Pokemon you have. A lot of Dragon Knights as your junglers or your range damage dealers. And then usually there's like one regional flex that's pretty different across every region. But generally that's what Pokemon Unite looks like. And the first team I'm representing, Secret Ship, they take that and they flip it completely on the head. They like to play Razor Leaf Decidueye, not even Spirit Shackle, but Razor Leaf Decidueye. When they do play Hoopa, they're playing with Trick Phantom Force, not always with Hyperspace Hole. They don't use Blissey, and in place of Blissey, they go for even more crowd control in the form of Snorlax, and they also have Cramorant to kind of hold down their team fights. And I really want you guys to pay attention to this clip that I have prepared for you. They're going to be the team featured on the right side. And another thing before I get into this game is we talked a lot about EXP share and how it works on the lowest level Pokemon on the team. What these teams ended up doing, or what this team, Secret Ship, ended up doing, and I think they might have been the team to invent this, or at least the team to first show it in an official setting, is that they run 2 EXP shares, one on their tank, one on their support. And the reason for that is both of that support tank are constantly going to be sharing that spot for bottom XP. Once one XP share allows the other to pass it, that former one will start activating, and they both can ensure that they'll have their Unite moves for Second Dread, whether or not they win the farm. And if they're separated in the lanes, which they can be, they can always have an opportunity to get that EXP boosting effect. So really good distribution of farm, but really pay attention to how they leverage Decidueye in this composition and how good of a job they do at keeping it alive. They also like to use a lot of Talonflame, and what they'll do is they'll activate Hoopa's Trick onto Talonflame, and you're going to see that in a second here. And then when Hoopa goes to Phantom Force, Talonflame also gets the move Phantom Force if they've been tricked, and Talonflame Brave Bird's in, Phantom Force is back out, or at least that's their idea. So right here, you see this line that's connected. If this Talonflame was to get into danger here, they would be able to instantly press Phantom Force and they'd return back to their position. So a Pokemon that traditionally suffers from being out of position once they Brave Bird completely doesn't have that negative side effect. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and I don't think I can say this about a lot of teams out there, but Secret Ship, they love to hold this mid corridor, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to bait using Talonflame, using Snorlax, using Cramorant, these incredibly mobile characters, trying to bait them into this choke. Once they get into this choke, Decidueye has incredible AoE damage with Razor Leaf. There's not much space for the enemy team to return. Cramorant, same idea with their Unite move, big AoE damage. They're just looking for a bait and a fight to break out into this area. So let's keep watching. Talonflame takes it back. They're looking for the bait. It's coming. It's coming. We're still holding our choke. Talonflame goes in again. We find the engage. We go back. We find the bait. Snorlax is in. And here, look at the deciduous positioning. They just get to freely shoot whatever is in front of them. Cramorant Unite in the mix as well. And, you know, it's a difficult fight for them to take still. Decidueye lives on a hair. They use the portal to dodge and get into position. Once they've made enough space in the fight, they've gotten a couple picks. Their composition has so much damage. They're just going to take down the Zap. And once we get to see the Zap's HP, you'll notice that it's already getting taken down. Decidueye completely shreds it and goes the way of Secret Ship, and they end up winning that fight. So this is their signature strategy, I would say. A lot of teams, when they expect or when they think about Secret Ship, at least internationally, this is what we're looking at. Obviously, there's drawbacks. One, when you kind of understand that that's what the enemy team's prerogative is, you don't have to take the team fight there, but you have to figure out a way to deal with this constant Talonflame harassment. Because think about it, you basically have a mobile Spirit Shackle, right? You get to just snipe people as Talonflame, come back, snipe people, come back. Do this over and over and over again. So it can be very, very tough to play against Secret Ship. It's a team that I'm going to have a lot of eyes on. I want to see what crazy, incredible stuff they can come up with. But they're not the only team in the Unite Championship Series that we're going to be looking at World. So let's keep the ball rolling. You know, and I want to move on to the next team in Group A is Eternity. Now, they're one of the teams featured from Korea, from the South Korean region. And some of you might be familiar with this team. They go by, or they have a pretty star player on their team, Sejun Park, who has, I believe, won a VGC Worlds, been a part of TCG Worlds, and the only person in the world that's qualified for 3 major Pokemon Worlds events. VGC, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's TCG, it might be Pokemon Go, but yeah, and now Pokemon Unite as well. So just a star-studded lineup in terms of what they offer from an international scene. He's also a part of Pokemon Go. Like, yeah, he's definitely, like, when it comes to an international player that would kind of take the crown as the Pokemon GOAT, I think Sejun Park's name definitely has to be in the running, right? If there's a Pokemon Mount Rushmore, Sejun Park is on it. Perhaps they might not have the best performance or press performance when it comes to Unite perspective. I think a lot of teams give KR and this region a bad rap, maybe sometimes justifiably, not even saying that they don't justify some of the negativity thrown at them, because I think their meta can often be behind in this region, in my opinion, as a player. But Sejun and his team, you know, they've got a star-studded lineup for their region. They perform really well. They've got an interesting way that they approach the game, where they're not only are they not doing that 1-1-3 meta you see a lot in the West and even in Japan, they are running dual lanes, and not any kind of dual lanes, but you'll see things like Greedent and Wiggly in the bottom lane, heavily reliant on Serena to carry. So familiar Pokemon, but a somewhat different way of approaching it. And here's just some more information Pokemon Unite put together for Sejun. What makes Eternity the best trainers? We have a deep understanding of the game and good at taking objectives. I'd say, you know, that's what's elevated them in Korea and got them to the point where they have. Heron, great at using rollout, and yeah, they're big fans of rollout Wiggly as well, which you'll see a lot in the Eastern meta, a lot of rollout Wiggly being influenced. But let's take a look at the clip that we've got prepared here. So just for reference, Eternity is the team on the left that we're going to be taking a look at here. And their composition, they've got Greedent and Wiggly in this game. This is one of the games from, I believe this is one of their qualifying matches. But other than that, very standard stuff, you know, Serena, Dragonite. So a bit of what you would expect as standard, and a bit of, you know, their own regional diversity as well. So to set the stage, we're a couple seconds before Zap. Eternity is getting some last second scores. They've got a pretty sizable point lead, pretty sizable XP lead going into Zap as well. But, you know, other team is in position, and as you guys know, anything can happen when it comes to the world of Pokemon Unite. Greedent's looking to maybe look for a bait, start off this team fight, look for a reason to engage. Keep your eyes on the Wigglytuff here. Remember, they might have the rollout, and there's the rollout. They find the rollout engage, just as the Sejun Park says. All it takes is one pick, all the Unite moves come out. Instantly, enemy Serena goes down. Slowbro goes down, another member goes down, and that's it. You know, they're playing this dance at Zap, and they find the rollout engage, really popular choke to find in that corridor, and then the game pretty much ends from there. So it'd be interesting to see if they can put rollout to use in the international scene. I'd say a lot of players, when they get hit by it once, they're more hesitant on getting hit by it again. But if they've just got the wiggly goat in the world and they've got the rollout angles, I'll be excited to see what they can do at Worlds with this. So next up, we've got Renaissance from the APAC region, and I believe they're a team out of Singapore. They've consistently dominated their region. It's a team that I've actually watched a lot in the past as well. And one of the favorite Pokemon I don't have listed here because I don't know if it's a Renaissance favorite, but it is a favorite of the region, and it's Venusaur. So if you guys have watched a lot of APAC games, a lot of that Southeast Asia meta, the South Asian meta in India as well, even it leans towards, is Venusaur is like this kind of anchor that exists. Venusaur with Petal Dance, Giga Drain, oftentimes on the back of a Blissey. We've even seen some of these teams in this region adapt Assault Vest Venusaur, which is, you know, kind of absurd, but they like to use the Assault Vest as an additional defensive item against the opposing Venusaurs. I've seen it do some success. You know, dropping that muscle band can be risky, but they try to leverage Blissey on the back of that. I wouldn't say that's a Renaissance special, but I want to get you guys to understand what the APAC region can be like. Very Venusaur dependent, but Renaissance, when I think of Renaissance, I'm thinking of Kamiru. This player absolutely considered like one of the carries in this region. They get a lot of the farm. Kamiru's not afraid to play very different stuff. I've seen him play stuff from Machamp all the way to Gardevoir. Gardevoir is also very popular in this region as well. I've seen him play Talonflame, just pretty much anything that Kamiru feels like playing. We've seen it before in an international sense. Very 2-1-2 heavy gameplay in terms of the meta in this region, and you'll see that a lot in the international teams. 2-1-2, but a more traditional kind of 2-1-2 with the Serena and Hoopa top. And yeah, just a team that's, you know, done a number in their region, very strong. But at the same time, you know, they're not without their faults. A lot of their aggression can go punished. So it'd be interesting to see how Kamiru and Renaissance shape up in the international scene. Little fun fact about Kamiru, he lost his Game Boy with his first Pokemon game in a coin flip bet. I don't know if that's meant to be a nod at Pokemon Unite being coin flip or not. But hopefully they don't lose a coin flip at Zap. Really funny. What's he looking forward to most in London? Atmosphere. And yeah, think about this as well, guys. A lot of these players, it's the first time they've traveled, potentially since before COVID. Potentially first time in their lives for some people. Sometimes, well, for a lot of people, I know it's their first time in Europe as a whole. So it's very exciting for them, but nerves and just the pressure of everything. I would expect a lot of teams, probably every team is going to be dealing with some level of nerves. But yeah, let's take a look at Renaissance here. And we'll go with the sound as well, because I want to throw a nod to these casters. A lot of these casters in every region do a great job. Renaissance is a team at the left, and we're about 20 seconds before Zap. And this is the grand finals. Renaissance coming through the lower bracket. Both teams got a Venusaur. Immediate pick onto the Sylveon.
No Lucario, that's death down, but Talonflame is the answer. Right now there's a reset from KSD, nice hyperspace hole, and the
this fight's going really close. And this is actually one of the games where Renaissance ends up dropping. And it's actually an interesting clip that I have. It's funny that I show a game where they lose. But let's go back. I want to actually still look at the Zap fight. So Renaissance ends up getting this Dread, and they've made it to Game 5 of the Grand Final. So they've already qualified at this point, right? So they're pretty much just playing for money, which is still a lot of money on the line here. And okay, the reason this is why I wanted to pull up this clip is a lot of times they'll end up getting like one pick like this. It's really good for them. And then this team fight just ends up going into which team's Venusaur is more pumped. So in a Venusaur mirror match, it ends up just being complete chaos. Like, I'm looking at Yang over here on the side of Renaissance and Wraith on the side of Venusaur. I'm going to revisit this same clip, I think, later on as well. But just look at the complete chaos in these team fights, right? It's almost hard to, even as a spectator, to really follow what's happening. And they're just Venusaur ults getting popped, Venusaur Giga Drains, Venusaur everything. And even you can hear the casters talking about how powerful Venusaur is in this meta. So when I think about Renaissance, what I'm gonna want to see in an international scene is how are they going to deal with playing Venusaur into non-Venu mirror matches, right? Because when I watch a lot of these games, there's a lot of Venusaur, but you know, I'd love to see things like Gardevoir, things like Machamp jungle, whatever it might be. I think Renaissance, for this, most of the set, they did play a lot of Venusaur, but if I look into this game, this is one of the games earlier in their set where they bust out Zerora. They've got Azora. I think they might end up dropping this game as well, but when it comes to the grand finals of the biggest tournament in their lives, even if this win doesn't mean they qualify for Worlds, they're still happy to bust out Azora, which I think sends a little bit of a message to the testament on how much they're willing to experiment. We'll see how Camiro and the rest of his team is able to show up at Worlds, but yeah, exciting team to look out for, dominant in their meta. They end up dropping in the grand finals, but two teams did make it out of this region, so they're able to make it forward. Team ICLEN. Now, this is a team from the Oceania region, which is generally like Australia and New Zealand. And this is a team that, when you think about this region, a lot of teams had their eyes on Ground Zero, whether that's Sulu, you know, with Sulu, Joe, Lush, and the rest of the gang there. So that was the team, I guess, that was favorites to kind of win it, or at least make it to the grand finals. But they end up, ICLEN ends up being the team to upset and knock them down. And they did it on the back of no Hoopa, which is very, very different. You know, even a team like Secret Ship that, you know, went completely different in terms of the meta, these guys, you know, they kept the Blissey and they dropped the Hoopa from their composition. So, you know, interesting play style. They've also been together since Dota 2. Love to hear a good story where teams stay together, they grow together, and ICLEN's been doing that. They've also been coached by my teammate Zugrug, and I think Zugrug had a pretty strong influence on their team and helping out with their macro. But when it comes to ICLEN, I think Untamed has been their captain. I heard a story about ICLEN and that the way that he recruited Pengu, I believe, on his team was they're playing a solo queue game of Dota 2, and he ran into Pengu, and in that game, a lot more people use the voice chat, and Untamed was like, he's cool, why don't I invite him to play? They became friends, and they've been playing together ever since. So team that came from a different game, from different game solo queue, very cool to see. And why Untamed likes to compete in the Unite Championship Series, finding another competitive outlet was necessary to prove myself I can still achieve what I set out to do. Yeah, that leans on their Dota history, you know, being a very strong team out of New Zealand. And Pokemon, Game Boy Yellow and Pokemon Yellow were one of their first games to play as a kid, and that was same thing for me as well. So yeah, I mean, exciting team. They definitely have a really strong underdog story when it comes to their region, but even in the international sense, I'm not sure if a lot of teams have this team under their radar, but their macro, their team play together, at least some part of their trust, being players that have played together for so long, does come together. Take a look at ICLEN's composition. There's no Blissey. There's no Hoopa, so they're rocking the Eldegoss. Eldegoss Machamp is a comp that even there's an NA team that has played them before. I think it's the Brave Birders. They love to use like this Eldegoss Machamp composition where the Machamp gets like super speed in the team fights from the Leaf Tornado, and on the back of the shield, the Machamps can carry, but they've got multiple threats on this team. Dragonite, Serena, just pretty much a little bit of everything. In the final game, they go for a flip, and I remember, this is a pretty close flip. It ends up going their way. Big Machamp ult in the Zap pit as well.
Oh my goodness!
ICLEN ends up taking it down, and they end up winning. And you'll see a lot of these international regions, even it happened a lot in NA. A lot of games come down to a big flip, and it's the teams that performed best in the flip situation end up coming out ahead. So if they do rely on having to flip in the international sense, it might be tough, but it is one of the ways to play without a Hoopa. The reason is that if your entire team just shows up to the Zap fight on their own, you don't really need a Hoopa to bring you into Zap, right? If everyone just walks there on their own, it does limit your macro in the rest of the game potentially. But if you just look at ICLEN's Machamp, just at any point I go into a game, you just see how aggressive they play with this Machamp Pokemon, and just existing on the enemy side, taking as much farm as they can, and leveraging that incredible amount of mobility. It's one of the teams that, when I think about watching them play Machamp, it reminds me of some of the ways teams have leveraged Dive Cram, where Cram jumps over the walls, is aggressing on enemy farm. They're using Machamp as almost like a more punch heavy, like take enemy teams farm Machamp, and then they still have Serena Dragon Knight on the back, consuming farm and just being a part of the game. So yeah, ICLEN definitely, they've got a really great story when it comes to their underdog aspect and them making it out to the international scene again. And yeah, it's a team that a lot of people might not have under their radar as players, but I think spectators wise, they've got a lot of fans from their region. Let us move on to Group B, which has got some pretty notable teams. T2, I think, is a team people may recognize on the back of Supercell. Supercell, I think they've had success in other games, but they've also just made a mark in Pokemon Unite. When I think of the Japanese region, Supercell is a name that comes to mind from day one of Pokemon Unite. It's a player that held the rank 1 position when me or Zugrug or someone on my team wasn't holding the #1 rank. And then they also took on a player that had been dominating in Japan, and they ported them over in Mame. Mame is like this very aggressive, whether he's playing Greninja or any carry Pokemon he's playing. We've seen Mame have an incredible amount of success. He's one of the players that in, I think it was Aos Cup in Japan, they ran Muscle Band, Razor Claw, Scope Lens, X Attack, Greninja. Just complete aggression. So if Mame was brought onto this roster later on, but from what we've seen and what some of the mods have made me aware of, is it might be possible that Mame might not be playing at World. So that's one thing I want to keep. If they don't have Mame, I think this team is weaker. But you know, another team that's not very heavily fixated on Hoopa, they are really, really good at team fighting. They really leverage Pokemon like Wiggly, which is in a Pokemon that's been dominant in the Japanese scene for a really long time. But I've also seen them run some Aegislash in their grand finals as well. Takishima, player featured on Unite Championship Series for them. Most reliable member of T2, Mame. He's always thinking about macro play. And like when I think of Mame, I look at his aggression, but I think a lot of his teammates, and I've heard this before as well, is that he was brought on to help the strategic aspect of their game. There was a player's interview that was done, and when they talked about Mame, they were like, this guy's always thinking about the game. So whether or not he's still on the roster or not, I think he's had a deep influence on the macro gameplay for this team and really helped them take that to another level. So let's take a look at this team. We see Mame is playing Serena, Supercell on Wiggly, which honestly, Supercell has been playing Wiggly since day one of Pokemon Unite, since it's been popular. So that's exciting to see. One thing I wanted to make a note of in this game, and the reason I've got the start of the game here, is I wanted you guys to take a look at the laning setup for both of these teams. T2, they're used to playing against teams, and this is one of the games that they used to qualify for Worlds. They have Mame in the jungle as Serena, Aegislash bottom, but look at what Supercell is doing. Jungle Invade, EXP share Wigglytuff. He doesn't get in time to contest the red buff, which is what the Dina ends up going for first. Tries to get the pound reset, still doesn't end up getting the crab either, but just look at the amount of pressure he's putting on in the jungle. And this is what I've seen Supercell do since day one, whether it's invading Audinos, invading jungle, just takes Wiggly to the next level, secures it with pound. And now this Dragon Knight's early game is completely destroyed. The talent invade strat. I mean, look, Supercell's, these guys have their own genius. I would not take credit for how some of the stuff they come up with. And this is something we don't end up seeing on camera, but I wish I could show you guys. He still ends up going down, but the way that he retreats, and this is something I've learned from Japanese players. This goes back to like the era of like Baki and Yamada and these really classical Pokemon Unite Japanese players. Is they go into the speed flux zone and they take the berry and then they X speed out. That's where I got the X speed tech was from. You know, I started doing it in NA. No NA players were like really focusing on this, but Japanese players have been doing this since a long time. And Supercell's goal in the early game is to just make pressure, make chaos, alleviate pressure off of Mame to let Mame carry in the late game. And imagine, like, you know, if you're griefing 1-for-1 on Pokemon in the game, like a Wigglytuff doesn't mind being lower level, but a Dragonite under leveled is very dangerous. So yeah, I want to see how Supercell is going to bring this element of Wiggly gameplay, or this element of chaos to the international scene. I think it's a strategy that can have a lot of effectiveness, but regardless, like the rest of this team, all individually very talented. They've all been very successful throughout Pokemon Unite, whether it's you know, getting good finishes or just existing within the Japanese scene. And Mame, when she got added, was a great addition to the team. So I think this is a very strong team to keep an eye out for during Worlds. Let us move on to Team No Show. So this is your other team coming out of the Korean region. This is kind of, if you guys are familiar with like Apprentice Esports, this is a similar kind of vibe in the sense that within their region themselves, they've done pretty good, but they haven't necessarily won a whole lot, but they did finish second place 3 times. So these guys are like, you know, the 1 and 2, if you think about a region. These guys are the number 2 team coming out of Korea, but still very interesting to look out for. You know, talented players, still takes a lot of competitive drive and skill to be able to achieve what they have at their level. But when we do look at their meta, I think a lot of interesting choices come into play, a lot of flip-oriented potentially gameplay. But also, whenever you look at their gameplay, they seem to be like one full patch behind. One of the things that was noted out is that, you know, they're still very heavily reliant on Duraludon, which has not been strong since Blissey's been released at all. So it's interesting to see. We'll see how they adapt when it comes to the time making it to an international scene, if they're going to be running some stuff we saw in regionals and rely on that strategy, or if they've taken some of the extra time that they have now to innovate. I'm excited to see what they've got. But while in here, when we were making the team, I ended up no showing, so we named it No Show. That's funny. What makes No Show the best trainers? Everyone's good, takes practice seriously, and which is how I believe we made it. Everyone does well and is trustworthy. So, you know, they have a lot of faith within their own team, and they put together a good showing. Getting second place in every tournament's not easy at all, and they're going to be representing Korea in the international finals. I wanted to show what their laning setups are like, because I think in Korea some of these teams have got the more interesting laning setups. Like we saw in Japan as well, this Aegislash bottom, and again we're seeing Aegislash Hoopa bottom. I think that's a potential weakness that might be abused in the within the Western teams and the Eastern teams, is if they go to and we're gonna rewatch what just happened there. If they lean on this Aegislash bottom lane, I think it might get heavily punished by characters that are better in the lane or equal in the lane, but scale much better throughout the mid game. Like things like we've seen Tree bottom, we've seen Serena bottom, seen Absol bottom. I think they might abuse that Aegislash. I think Tri-Lanes might abuse it as well. But yeah, one of the things that when I say that their early game, it's just an interesting way of approaching the game. I'm not really sure what the plan is, and maybe these are regional differences that they've had to incorporate in their game. Maybe the Dragon Knight is looking to scout and invade, anticipating someone else from invading. But if we look at where the Dragon Knight is, they hop over mid, they get all the way here. Looks like they're gonna invade, and then they go back into their jungle. So I'm not sure what the plan is here, but in all fairness, we don't understand this region. This would get, if this just happened in a normal game though, I can tell you this Dragon Knight no longer can rely on triple clearing, which not a lot of them do, but this Dragon Knight is just late in the lanes to help out their lanes. And so a mistake like this, a problem like this, can snowball into the entire game being lost. So it's going to be weird. I'll look to see what they can incorporate and bring in from their sense. Another team that isn't running Blissey and is running a lot of Snorlax. Snorlax is a natural counter to Hoopa in the sense that he has two moves that enable interaction with Hoopa portals. You can either heavy slam and knock them out of portals, or you can block them out of portals, and it's better engaged than Blissey outside of a Unite move. So yeah, Blissey's got a lot of strengths, but this team, this region itself, not a lot of Hoopa here. So we'll see. I have no idea what to expect from a team like No Show, but they've gotten second place in every tournament within their region, and you never know, anything can happen on the World Show. Team Orangutan is next. This is formerly No Lucario, and if you saw the clip earlier, Renaissance did play them in the finals. So we'll watch this from No Lucario's perspective. But again, when you're thinking about No Lucario, a lot of things that is true with Renaissance is true for No Lucario as well. They're not relying on traditional types of carries. You see a lot of Venusaur. Obviously, in the namesake, this is a team that historically didn't play a lot of Lucario when it was meta. And another team that likes to experiment with the types of picks that they introduce to the game, but also with their laning setup, 2-on-2, a Serena Blissey dual lane. So we'll have to, you know, it's going to be hard to predict how these teams are going to fare into teams running 2-on-2 and 1-1-3. We're literally going to find out in a couple days, but it is interesting to see that this team within their region, that's what they've come to prefer. Dev, I think this is their attacker player. I see them playing a lot of Sylveon. Their advice for players is to get information from others, learn from your mistakes, and try to understand Pokemon, every Pokemon in the game. And this is definitely true. You know, I've seen a lot of these regions take stuff from the Western meta and then kind of make it their own. Venusaur is the one I've talked about a lot, not opting to run Lucario, opting to run things like Gardevoir, just very different styles of picks. They take some stuff from NA and then they innovate what they can in their own region. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at this. I think we might have seen a part of this earlier, but this is the game where their opponent's Renaissance went with a Zorora pick, and they've got their own Venusaur. They've got Sylveon in this game, and this is just moments before Zapdos. So they break the tier 1 goal before Zap, which is smart. So this is something you might see, and maybe people have a tough time understanding why this happens, is if you look at Dev, their Sylveon player, they're baiting the enemy team, hitting Zapdos, trying for a fight to get pulled out, looking for any opening where they can. And a lot of eyes are on this Venusaur because Venusaur is a big part of their comp. Wraith goes into the middle, finds an incredible Venusaur Unite on the back of everyone, and still ends up staying alive. The Wild Charge Aurora maybe looked as a counter, doesn't end up working out. But again, a lot of what I said for Renaissance holds true for No Lucario, at least within this tournament, as Dev picks up almost a pentakill on their end. A lot of it ended up just becoming the difference between which team had the stronger Venusaur. So I think the Venusaur Mirror is a difficult one to play and is an interesting one to play, but that's not what they're going to be playing against in the international scene, right? Other regions aren't going to be bringing Venusaur as their primary pick. You're going to see a lot more Dragon Knights. You're going to see a lot more, you might see some Lucarios, which you're not seeing in this. And Dragonite, Absol, you see a lot of. These Pokemon can make Venusaur hard to exist. So teams like IX and XIS, which you'll see, have played a lot of Absol in their regions and a lot of Dragonite. those are pretty natural counters to Venusaur, and I'll have to see both these APAC regions. Like, I'm sure their players are more than capable of playing other things, but they did rely on Venusaur to get here. So yeah, I mean, No Lucario, I'm not anticipating a Venusaur every game, but we'll see how they play without it. Let's move on to another portion of the world, and it's India. India is a region that didn't initially have a Unite Championship spot. Once, when UCS was first announced, India didn't have a spot at all. There was an expansion where they introduced some South American regions and some Central America regions, expanded the regions from there. India still wasn't announced then, and it wasn't until months before, weeks before the last regional was going to be played, is that they announced India was getting a spot at Worlds. Indian community really pushed for it, and I'm glad to see that they did. And unlike the other teams that had championship points allow them to qualify for the regional finals, in India, all they had was a regional qualifier and then the regionals, and the team that wins it, they're the team that got out. So Revenant, a team that had been very experienced within the Indian meta and in the Indian community, they're the team that does end up making it out. I believe, I think it's fair to say that they were the favorites within India to make it out as well. So it's good to see that they ended up coming out. They're used to playing against an incredibly diverse meta, guys. In India, the teams aren't afraid to run score comp. There's flip comps. There's full team fighting. India is a region that's been using Cramorant before it was even buffed. They've been using the old school, like Hurricane Surf Cram. They completely go off the rails, and they run a lot of different and wild stuff. But that being said, Revenant, for the most part, holds it down on pretty traditional things, whether it be Serena, Blissey Hoopa, D-Knight, and I think they had an A9 in a couple of their games as well, which will be interesting to see how Alolan Ninetales fares in the international meta. But yeah, they went undefeated throughout the regional, so definitely the dominant team. And when you think about who these teams' practice partners are, India's playing against the No Lucarios, the Renaissance, that APAC region and that OCE region. I don't know what their ping is like, but I think it's good enough that they can run tournaments, and that's usually who their practice partners are. So it'll definitely be an interesting time to see how they adapt to the Western meta when it comes to Japan, that heavily Eastern meta, but also the NA and EU teams as well. Omen from Revenant, his advice to trainers is play ranked, try different Pokemon. Why they're the best is because they flip Zap really well, and he loves playing Talon with Focus, Energy Amp, Razor Claw, Eject Button. Interesting Talon build. If you guys are in the mood to try a dynamic or fun type of Talon build, maybe mess around with Focus, Razor, Energy Amp. It's Omen's build. Energy Amp, Unite move can be very fun. Razor Claw is a great item for Talonflame, and Focus is always consistent. So maybe give it a try. I might try it myself as well. But they believe themselves to be good flippers. And let's watch and take a look at their game here. So this is a game where I want to kind of just go through how dominating they are. And we can even pull it back a little bit of a small preview there. So we're at Dread here, and Revenant's the team on the right. They've only dropped one game in their grand finals, and they call themselves really good at flipping, but I mean, they've kind of just won this team fight. They secure the Dread on the back of Omen on his D-Knight. He did say they're good at flipping, but Nova on the Absol's got a Quadra here. And watch, they push down this lane, but they're not ready to let this game end. And this is what I really liked about watching Revenant's gameplay, is you might see a lot of teams go back and take the farm up on their map, but they're like, no, we're ending the game here. Absol gets their Unite. They're pushing tier 2 right after first Shred, and they're behind the enemy lines. They get another full team wipe. Everyone gets their Unite, and at 6:15, or let's see, 6:10, they end up breaking the bottom tier 2 goal. So is this a testament of the region itself being weaker and them being an outlier? Maybe. Or is this team just that dominant that they're able to pull stuff off like this? Probably the truth lies somewhere within the middle. But it takes a lot of confidence to go after that tier 2 gold that early in the game, because there's a lot of farm up on the map. There's a lot safer plays you can do. The enemy team might not even go to defend it, and you can't break it unless they actually die. But just look at how aggressive that they play. They don't take their foot off the grass. They just completely, they're just pushing. But they're not forgetting about macro. They've got their Hoopa watching the bottom tier 1. They're not letting their goals get scored on. So very dominant team in the region. And this is, when I'm talking about Absol being played, this is a team that's not afraid to run Absol. So how is Absol going to fare in the Venusaur heavy meta from APAC? If they choose to run it, we'll have to see in the international scene. But it's definitely a team that I think people should be excited about watching. I've got some Indian heritage in me, so it's a team that naturally, just out of a sake of like nationality and patriarchy or patriotism, like being proud of the country that my parents are from, I'm gonna be watching India as well and see how they do. But yeah, very dominant team in their region, very exciting. A lot of famous players on their team as well. Not patriarchy, guys. Kiapa. Patriotism, you know, being proud about the country you're from. Cool. So Group C. Group C's got Blackhand. It's got Apprentice. Some very powerful NA and EU teams who are moving more into the Western meta. QLASH and Cruelty from South America, Central America. Teams that you guys might be a little bit more familiar with if you're my traditional audience. So Blackhand. This is a team that in the first half of UCS, Jungle Book had actually retired, and whose Jungle Book is their jungler or their central area player. He had actually retired to go back to school. And they're a team that was up and coming when they were under was it Apprentice? I don't even remember what their old team name is. Ascendance. They used to be Ascendance, that's right. So yeah, team that was very, you know, saw some success. Team I'm very used to competing with as well. Once they did add on Jungle Book, they still had a bit of issues, whether it be competing, and Overlord having to go to prom and dropping out of a tournament, or, you know, dropping games throughout different tournaments that they might have been a part of. Once they did get together, once they did get to the regional finals, they had a really amazing showing. They've got a star-studded lineup, a team that I'm very excited to watch during Worlds as well. I think if you look at every spot on their team, they've got teams that are players that are just really strong. Slash, he's a pro from Brawl Stars, really, really strong Blissey player, one of the best Blissey players potentially within the region. Like Blissey was a Pokemon that made, you know, Slash really shine out, in my opinion. They've got Elo, who used to be the attacker player on Team Blossom in the past. They recruited him and converted him to a support player. So having your damage dealer player on Hoopa definitely adds that element of, like, you know, being able to expect that you could even get more out of the Hoopa from a damage perspective. So Elo's really talented. Jungle Book, obviously, we talked about. Very strong 1-2 punch with Overlord. Overlord is their Lucario. Historically, Lucario player, been playing a lot of Serena, but he pretty much plays everything. Arguably the best e-speeder in the world, maybe the second best, tied with another NA player that we're going to go down. But yeah, very, very strong team. And the other thing I wanted to add is they've got a coach in ICLEN who, I can't speak for the Eastern meta, but one of the only teams that I know that has a pretty much a former professional Unite player coaching the team. He's been their dedicated coach since the inception of the UCS, where the region lock came in. So a lot of teams, when the region lock happened, they went to go play in their own regions. ICLEN said he's going to step back as a coach for the NA team because he played with a lot of NA players. And making that transition takes a lot of courage. I know everyone that competes has a drive to compete, and in a coach role, you don't get to do that as much, but he's embraced it really, really well. He's done a really good job coaching this team, and I think they've got a lot of influence coming from ICLEN and his VOD reviews. So definitely one of the teams to look out for in an international scene and to be excited about, wanting to see success for. Overlord, you know, they've played together for 6 months now. They're friends and they work well together. And apparently he only chose Water Sorter Pokemon for his first 6 games. Interesting. Don't think I've seen him play a lot of Blastoise. Does like to play a little bit of Greninja, but when I think Overlord, I'm thinking I'm thinking Lucario E-Speed. I'm thinking dominating with Machamp, dominating with the Azumarill, dominating with Serena. Whatever he picks, he definitely does a lot of work on. And apparently also an Apple Watch that he's holding on to in his cartoon thing. So that's cool. A little bit of a flex. This is a game they're 1-1. Overlord's been playing Lucario throughout the set. Lucario is what he's known for, but I think a lot of teams end up asking, or a lot of the time they end up asking him to play Power Up Punch Lucario, and you know, it's a lot harder to be more of a carry influence on that. So we end up seeing him on Serena in this game. Overlord on Serena. This is what I wanted you guys to see. 250, completely just diving in. He's almost level 15, level 14 on Serena. And stomp reset, ends up taking everyone down. And this is where their Serena pick in this set, I think, really ends up leading towards them winning. He tries to get the stop on the portal. But yeah, just a testament to how good Overlord is. He can switch up to the Serena and he still ends up doing really, really well. I think this might be the game where he does the big damage 130k game. So yeah, level 15 Serena in the end game. I think as someone who's played against Overlord a lot, what he does really well is he's always good at picking off the supports. If I'm ever out of position, Overlord will make sure and he'll take advantage of me. And look what he does to Retsu here. Retsu steps up a little bit, insta ults him and just one-shots him. Right? And then the objective ends up getting flipped. Blackhand gets the secure on it on the back of Slash. Slash is also really good at securing on Blissey. And they end up winning. But yeah, Overlord, really, really strong. Takes advantage of anyone being out of position. Always gets really, really fed in a lot of these games. They kind of rely on him as well. But I want to give a nod to everyone on this team. Kyrios, Jungle Book, Slash, Elo. Everyone is really, really, really powerful on the back of Blackhand. So, I don't know. One of the teams I'm definitely rooting for to win the entire event, at least as a viewer on my end. Cool. But yeah, enough about Blackhand. Let's move on to Apprentice Unleashed. So this is the #2 team in EU. And when you think of EU, you think of Apprentice and you think of Random Gaming, which we're going to talk about Random Gaming as well. But very, very talented team on the back of Apprentice Unleashed. Not afraid to pick very different types of picks. Like, I remember like long ago, like these players have been playing since early days of Pokemon Unite. And Gek would be like OG Mime player before Mime was popular at all. Bruv on Nouns or Random as well, big Mime player. But Klaus bringing out, you know, additional element on this team. Everyone, Zante, very, very talented team. But they do, unfortunately, have that second game curse, or second place curse, where they end up getting second in a lot of tournaments. And that's also what ends up happening in the EU regional finals as well. But they're responsible for some innovative aspects of the game and the meta as well, at least within EU. And I don't follow the EU scene as closely as maybe some of the people that live within the region, or obviously some of the EU players. But to my knowledge, they're the team that popularized this bot lane Serena gameplay. Ajax and Random, you know, especially Random Gaming, had been playing Absol bottom. They, you know, Gatlu plays Absol bottom, Greedent bottom, Revenant bottom. But when I think of Serena bottom, I'm thinking of Apprentice Unleashed. And that's what they ended up using well throughout this tournament. I know it's something that Random Gaming was expecting them to be playing as well. So I want to see if they bring more innovations like that for the world's meta as well. Zante, they've been playing together since November. And apparently him and Gek have some good synergy. They've been playing, they have a good dynamic, which is good to know. And he's named himself after his childhood cat. So if you're a big fan of cats, you might be a big fan of this team as well. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, I think this is a pretty popular game within Pokemon as well. That gets a lot of love. So Zante is pretty cool. Named after a cat. Pretty awesome. Let's watch their losers finals. One of the games from the losers finals. They end up winning this set to make it to the grand finals, and obviously making the grand finals would mean in Europe you qualify for Worlds. And this is what I wanted to talk about. Bottom lane Serena, something that's not very traditional. It's, you know, we've said that bottom lane, it's a lot harder to stack on. Lane's a lot longer. The minions are a lot tankier, but Apprentice has had no problem running this bottom lane Serena. So hopefully the casters come to the bottom part of the map pretty soon. And it's a team that runs Lucario and Serena together. Teams that usually have their same player playing that Pokemon. But look at Zante in the bottom lane. Just completely aggressing. 3-man Grassy Glide, 2-man Grassy Glide. And Stomps ends up getting out as well. Makes space for Chelvin to hit 8. And from here, this Dread fight is looking pretty good. And it's all coming on the back of that bottom lane Serena, putting pressure on. And I love, like, if you notice, he always gets his 2 stacks in. He gets ready. And the moment he finds an opening, he goes for it. He gets his Grassy Glide stun, stomps, kites back to the fight, waits for his cooldown. He's waiting, making space for their secure. He's going to go and help on the secure. And funny enough, Zante's the one that gets the secure over his own Dragonite. So, yeah, just incredibly strong Serena player, incredibly strong players all throughout the board on this team. And it'll be interesting to see if they add any innovations to the world scene. Team that's historically been second, but second to a team that's probably one of the best teams in the world, arguably, and second to a region that's one of the best regions in the world as well. So being second in EU does not matter. Anyone would be okay with being historically second if it meant being at Worlds. Cool. So Apprentice, exciting team to look out for. Very scary team. Let us move on to QLASH. Now, I'm going to preface this. From my understanding, I think QLASH might not be able to attend the event due to visa issues. It's really, really unfortunate. I wish gaming didn't have this drawback of visa issues and travel issues, but from my understanding, they might not be able to make it. And if that is the case, I feel bad for them 100%, but let's still give them the credit that they deserve in terms of them making it to the tournament. They did really, really well throughout UCS, collected a lot of championship points. But let's take a look at what their team is all about. Tempo, seen them play a lot of Lucario. This is a team that a lot of NA teams have also scrimmed against. Because the ping isn't that bad from their region to NA, a lot of NA teams have practiced against them. I've played a lot against their team. A lot of aggression, a lot of Lucario you'll see, but really heavy influence on Dragonite. And I think that might come from a team we're about to talk about soon as well, and that's XIS. But in the South America, Central America, and even a lot of the NA region now, Dragonite's been this anchor. But I think in their region, Dragonite probably never even left the meta. Another team that likes to run Serena bottom, so I'm not sure if they came up with it or Apprentice did, but this team, QLASH, they ran a lot of Serena in the 2-1-2 lane in the bottom side of the map. So again, another team that used Lucario and Serena together, I believe. But if I look at this game, and this is a game that they used to win to qualify as well, we see their Serena is laning in the bottom lane in a 2-1-2 with the team's Blissey. I'm not sure if that's something that came as a result in the entire meta, but seeing their Serena player start with, you know, an unfavorable lane matchup, and you see them getting knocked out here as well, to eventually, you know, getting farmed up and making an impact on the game is pretty impressive. And they play really well together as a team. I'm going for some caps here throughout the game as well. So, funny Blissey ult as we're watching. But regardless, you know, they're a team that definitely made some shifts in the meta. Strong players across the board. Team that a lot of NA teams have practiced against. They earned their spot in the World Finals, and unfortunately they aren't going to be able to attend. Would have loved to see them participate. Would have loved to see a lot of the flip meta that does happen in these regions. Would love to see how the Eastern teams, how the Western teams, how all the teams would have had to deal with their late game antics here. But if I'm looking at Yang, he gets the Blissey ult. He finds a pick on the enemy Dragon Knight, 2 levels down, still stomping on the D Knight. And the back of their bottom lane, Serena, who didn't have a lot of farm, ends up finding some incredible amount of picks, and just amazing team fight in the end. You know, they didn't rely on a flip to be able to win it, just raw team fight, and almost gets a little bit scary for them in the end, but nice to see them advance. Unfortunately, we won't see them in the international scene. Team Cruelty. These are your representatives from Mexico. A team that I hadn't heard much about until preparing for Worlds, to be honest, and seeing the group stages. But, you know, they did take down Stamina Mexico in the group stages, which was the #1 team in the region. So they were underdogs in their group, and they ended up coming out, and they beat the #1 seed in their region, and then they got dropped down to the lower bracket and made an incredible lower bracket run. They get a bracket reset in the grand finals, and they end up advancing and winning their regionals, qualifying for Worlds. One thing to note is Froy, player that you've seen, you might have seen a lot in NA. Used to play on a lot of different NA teams, played on the NA ladder. When the region lock did happen, unfortunately, they were excluded, obviously, from playing in NA tournaments. And they did have to play in Mexico. So I believe that they're a sub for this team. I'm not sure if he's coaching as well, or if he's going to be playing. But Froy adds a lot of depth to the team when it comes to strategy, comes to macro, and definitely helps advance this team even forward. El Premium Pro, you know, his trainer name is Premium Pro because he's a Premium Pro. Pre-game ritual, I stare at the mirror for 10 minutes, and at the end I say, I'm very handsome. And when asked who the most reliable member of their team, it's him, because he's very humble. So yeah, incredibly humble guy. Allegedly, according to his fans, very handsome, and also the best of the best. So we'll have to see if their confidence pulls through that they have from their regional scene, and how well they do on the international scene. I believe this team was renamed. Mamita's Club is their team name, but now they are going forward as Team Cruelty. But let us take a look here. Big team fight in the pit here, and hold on, let's move up the quality. Oh, that's what we've got. Unlucky. Good, incredible Trevenanting on both sides, and the team fight is just so messy. But I mean, they're coming out ahead. Incredible shoves from the Trevenant. That's El Premium Pro right there. The very handsome, the very humble, completely zoning everyone out on the back of Trevenant. And they end up securing the zap, and I mean, that's all it takes. For a lot of teams, their strategy is going to be have their strongest tank or their frontliners zone out the enemy team while your team takes Zapdos. It's a very basic way to play Pokemon Unite, but nothing wrong with playing the game that way. I think it's a very fair way to play, and if El Premium Pro can find the shoves, if he can handsome all over the enemy team, then we might see them pull off some incredible things at Worlds. So excited for this team. I'm sure Mexican fans are going to be tuning in to support their team as well. But it's cool seeing them bring an element from their region, which happens to be the Tree Mirror match, and we'll see how Trevenant fares in the international meta as well. Group D, last group. A lot of people refer to this as a group of death, hardest group. They definitely have 4 really, really strong teams from their region. I think one of the reasons why people refer to this as like the group of death is because they've got Nouns Esports, aka also known previously as Random Gaming, who has been dominant in their region. IX coming from NA, which has historically been a very good region. Baby Mazo's team, which has completely dominated their region, and Stamina, which is a team that also did well in their individual region, but also is very flip heavy and you know, any team can flip on any team, so it could, a lot of different things can happen. But yeah, Nouns Esports, formerly Random Gaming, also formerly Interclaps Random Esports for one of the UCS tournaments. Amazing team. I'd say when I look at this team and I look at every player on their roster, I would say that they've got a star in every roster. Bruv, who wasn't initially on this team, got brought over from Five Guys. Star tank player in EU. One of the best mimes in the world, arguably. Did a really good job adapting over to Blissey. Adesu, just really, really talented player. I don't think I've seen him played in this tournament, but whenever I see Adesu play ladder and I see him play stuff like Decidueye, this guy doesn't miss on his Spirit Shackle. It's like really, really talented player. Redma, incredible on the secure, incredible on holding down the top lane. Gatlu can play pretty much anything in the game and he makes it work. And you know, a lot of the influence that I get on how I like to play Greedent definitely comes from Gatlu's style of play. Like, his job is to get farm that he doesn't deserve and let his teammates get strong, but he always finds farm. He always finds a way to be impactful in team fights, and he's always playing something different. So Galu's great. Giz, their Hoopa, their support player, incredibly talented player. You know, someone I've talked to about Phantom Force. Me and him were some of the only players playing Phantom Force before everyone else started adapting to it. And he was one of the few people that reached out to me and was like, yo, you believe in Phantom Force? I believe in Phantom Force. So I have a lot of respect for him as Hoopa. And then even their sub Blaine, talented player in EU. They're, you know, very, very strong team. Most of you guys should know who they are, but if you don't, you know, this is a team that you're going to be wanting to keep an eye out for. Expect them to play very random things and expect them to dominate the lanes, dominate different parts of the game, and have strengths throughout the game that you might not expect from other teams. Like, you know, maybe they're jungle invading at the start, or maybe they're jungle invading with 2 people, or they're running 4 people in a lane. Like, it could be anything. Anything you might see them bring out. Adesu, he mentions most reliable member of the team is Gatlu. It's really good, but drives the game flow really well. And Gatlu's a great shot caller. I love his free game ritual. He kisses Gatlu's forehead and tell him that he'll protect his dreams. So hopefully that's what they end up doing on the international scene as well. So in the regional winners finals, I want us to take a look at their gameplay in the Zap fight here. So Adesu, really, really talented player. Look at how good, like, he's just constantly keeping up his stacks, going for different hyper beam areas to be annoying, and they get a great reset. Like, if you guys don't key in on what just happened here, I'm gonna run it back, because this is something that I take a lot of pride of when Hoopa players do it, because I think it's a big part of Hoopa's kit, but it's anticipating the Serena Unite and laying down your portal to counter it. So Zante has to unite here to stay alive. You know, if you're playing throughout the flow of the game, you'll expect that. He sees that, already pre-places the portal to land perfectly on Redma the moment he lands, and completely nullifying the enemy Serena ult. That causes Serena to not get tempo in the fight, gets a unite move wasted on the Serena. Same time, Desu hasn't even dropped his D-Dance stacks on Dragonite, and Gatlu's been making space with the tree. Everyone on the team completely contributing, and they're not even, you know, you might expect teams to go for a flip. They're just completely winning over the team fight. So talented players, they deserve their spot. They deserve to be recognized as one of the best teams in the world. Team to look out for, not entirely sure what we'll expect. Hoping to see some Greedent, but I think we'll expect a lot of generic breakdowns on what their team is like. I think we'll see a lot of Blissey, a lot of Hoopa, potentially some Redma, Lucario, but I think Gatlu's picks, Desu's picks, they might flex a little bit more. We might see some more exciting developments from some of the other players on their team as well. But yeah, team to look out for, a team I have a lot of respect for. Very excited for them to make a showing, and well-deserved spot as one of the best teams in the world. Now we go to IX Gaming, another really powerful team. Team in NA that hasn't had the most consistent roster. A lot of IX has members that were previously on Blossom. Pika Diff was on Foreign Famous for a bit. Nudo hadn't really had a lot of competitive showing until joining IX. And Retsu, who has been a part of, I guess, what the core of the team could have been considered. He moved from being their solo top lane Lucario player, and Retsu is really talented. Moving on to the support role, similar to Blackhand. Ren, who was initially on their roster, a teammate that they relied heavily on to carry in the jungle area, received a permanent and then switched to a 90-day suspension. I don't really have any details on why, but they were disqualified from participating in any Pokemon events. So they're not going to be traveling to IX to compete, So a part of that is going to reflect on their performance when it comes to how well they do at Worlds. But the player that they're bringing on, Kratos, he is a part of IXGT previously, and he is an incredibly talented attacker player from their team. He's going to have to be adjusting over within the new role. They've got Bolby as one of their subs from Full Send as well. Bolby used to play on IX, so they've got talented players across the board. OG, in particular, when we talked a lot about Overlord being that rank 1 Lucario, maybe rank 2, OG is the other player that we think about in that 1 or 2 spot. So really, really strong. They have another strong Lucario player in Retsu who role swapped. Pika Diff is a tank player who I think might get underrated by the audience, by the viewers, but from the players that I talked to, from my personal experience, I think Pika Diff is an incredibly strong Blissey. One thing that I like about Pika Diff, and I haven't talked about this a lot publicly, but I noticed Pika Diff a lot of times will go Safeguard, and I think his Safeguard timings are one of the best out there. So if it's a meta that ends up reliant on Safeguard, I think Pika Diff will shine when it comes to the other players. But his secures and everything is strong. Nudo and Absol one trick pretty much popularized Absol in the competitive meta. I know Gatlu's played it. I know Random Gaming's played it. I know XIS has played it. I know India's played it. But let's be real, like for sure, Nudo is one of the players that you associate with Absol. And Absol's been changed. Absol's been nerfed. Absol has seen some different advancements since the regional finals. So will he be able to adapt and play other things? We've seen him play Pikachu. We've seen him play other things since the regional finals or before the regionals even. But regardless, that is main one trick, and it's going to be something we'll have to see how well they do at adapting. But yeah, Pika Diff. Pika in Japanese means shine, and it's a reminder that no matter how difficult things get, keep on shining. I love Pika Diff's positivity. It's a great guy as well. Advice to other trainers: never give up, keep on working hard and getting better. So yeah, Pika Diff, solid individual. Before we get into some gameplay on their end, let's take a look at a pretty notorious clip from their match against Blackhand. And Nudo's low. They look for Zap, and it ends up getting secured by Nudo. And he gets low. He's on 1. Going to score, sucker punches, and unfortunately ends up dying to the bees. And since then, it has never been stopped talking about, for sure. So unfortunate, funny clip, but regardless, very talented Absol player. There's a reason why they did make it out to Worlds. They're the best, better NA team during the tournament, and they ended up making it out. This is their match against Blackhand. So let's move to game 1 here towards the end. Let's take a look at how this team fight goes. So remember, OG recognized as one of the best Lucario players. And OG is, I think, one of the few players that I think has a really strong E-Speed Lucario and a Power-Up Punch Lucario. Just such a strong Lucario player. Definitely one of the carries of the team when we think about this team. And big resets. Both teams Hoopa players very good on this team as well. So you'll see a lot of resets. Good resets from Retsu, good resets from Elo. And OG fighting a couple kills. Close combat, triple kill. And they end up winning a team fight at the final Dread. And we'll go ahead and see what the Zap fight looks at as well. So if we look at the minimap, Ajax is already on Zap. They're ready to start a fight. They're ready to just start an entire flip, and it does end up getting flipped a bit, but it's a pretty calculated flip here. They recognize that the enemy team wasn't in the pit. Kyrios was split pushing on tree. The enemy Hoopa wasn't in position. Flip ends up happening, and this is what we'll see a lot of in Worlds. A lot of what might seem like flips, but I wouldn't consider this as much of a flip as you'll see some other teams do. But these guys definitely not afraid to pull the trigger when the opportunity presents themselves. So we'll see how Ajax does. I'm excited to see how they fare, but they've got some complications. They've lost a player that they rely on, and they've also the meta shifts might not be favorable for them. Let us move on to XIS, aka Baby Mazo's team. This is a team that, when you think about teams that dominate their region, now like Random Gaming dominated EU. Revenant dominated through India region. Japan has had a little bit of shakiness in terms of which team dominated. NA, it's been all over the place as well. But when it comes to South America East, or primarily where the Brazilian teams reside, Baby Mazo, XIS, this team is just completely dominated. I don't think they've lost a single official tournament. These guys are just completely talented. What Mazo ended up doing was he took the best players from Brazil and made his own star-studded team, and just been rocking with it. They win every single thing that they play in. Funny enough, since Dragon Knight's been released, they've been playing it in every meta, and I don't think they've stopped playing Dragon Knight since then. So when it comes to D-Knight and D-Knight getting buffed right before regionals, it's probably very exciting news for this team. So I don't think they get enough credit in an international scene. Maybe they might be getting slept on even as well by international teams, but they've got a lot of fans. I'm expecting big things from them. If they can make it out of groups, which they've got a tough group to make it out of, I expect them to take a lot of games off a lot of teams you might not even expect. Absolute just dominant forces. Every slot, whenever I've watched their gameplay, I've always been impressed. Mazo, you know, what makes them the best trainers? Only team to have won all 5 monthly finals, and it's right. So yeah, they completely dominated the scene, and they deserve their spot at Worlds for sure. They're absolutely just incredibly talented team. Let's take a look at a fight here in the early game. So this is 720. Mazo is just getting his farm to inch to level 8. He'll get it off this crab. First dreadnought of the game is spawning soon. You see both teams, D-Knight 7.25, 3/4 hit 8 off that bottom crab. So very formulaic meta. But take a look at Fabiano. I think they're Lucario player, and look at how good they are in e-speeding. They're in, finds the opportunity, another e-speed, ends up going down, but look at their Blissey. 1 egg, 2 egg, he's still alive, draws enough space for, in the meantime, Mazo's fully stacked, gets a huge beam, they're gonna get a huge reset. Like, every single player on this team is just incredibly talented. So, you know, when you have a team that has, you know, it's hard to find a weakness in their individual players, it's very, very scary in an international scene. So excited to see how they compete. I have a lot of faith in them to do well, but they are in the same group as the last 2 teams we talked about. They're in the same group as Ajax, same group as Nouns, same group as Random, obviously. So it's going to be tough. But I think incredibly talented team. When we look at the meta breakdown, it's a lot of what you would expect. A lot of D-Knight. They're pretty much rocking what Ajax plays. Absol lane, D-Knight jungle, Lucario top, Hoopa maneuvering around the map, Blissey support tank. So yeah, I want to see how these metas clash together with an international scene and the Eastern things that we talked about earlier in the stream. And finally, last team is Stamina. this is another team that I believe might not actually be able to get to play at Worlds due to visa issues. I'm not 100% on that. Regardless, it doesn't matter. I mean, it sucks that happens, but for the sake of us introducing the 16 teams that qualified for Worlds, I think historically, when we go back and we look at this presentation, look at these slides years from now, I want to be able to say that these teams also made it. So it doesn't matter to me that they didn't, they're not actually playing. I still want to show them off to you guys, to my audience. And, you know, maybe I don't like the way that they play the game, but they deserve their spot by winning. And when I say I don't particularly like the way they play the game, is this is a region, and it might not even be their fault, but it's the region that heavily likes to go for the flips. And when I say flip, they see an objective and they hit the objective. They happen to be the best of the best when it comes to flipping, and they made their mark. But if we look at them and when they go for team fighting, they still end up doing a pretty good job as well. Solstice, player that we've seen even in NA games, because his ping is playable for our region. Very talented player. His pregame ritual is he drinks water and takes a deep breath. Yeah, patience, dedication, really powerful team, and you know they deserved their qualifying spot at Worlds. But let's take a look at what Zapdos looks like in this region in Central America. 8 seconds before Zap is spawned, both teams' Blastoise is spinning on top of each other, getting ready. 3 seconds from Zap spawning, 2, 1. Where's Zapdos? It's in the middle of the map. Zap's HP is at half. Zap is dead within 5 seconds, and it's gone. And that was every single game of this grand final. Was Zap being alive for no more than like 7 to 8 seconds. Only one team wins the game. Only one team wins Zap. So they did it the best in their region. They ended up qualifying. I think even if this team doesn't end up competing at Worlds, but I would not be surprised to see this type of strategy employed by any team. If there's a team that's in a desperate situation and they feel like the other team has their number, a flip can make any game at any state at least give your team like a 25% chance to win, even if you're desperately behind in experience or completely outdrafted. Yeah, Zap does not stay alive at all a good amount of time in these games, but we'll have to see how this gets implemented in international sense as well. They've confirmed they're not going via Twitter. Unlucky. Yeah, I mean, unfortunate. I would have loved to see them compete as well. But yeah, we don't end up seeing them. And that is the 16 teams, guys. A bit of a longer one today, or about the same amount of time as usual. But if you've been here since the start of the video or the start of the stream, you know, thank you to everyone listening to me talk about these teams. Again, obviously, most of my audience knows that a lot of the reason why I make content was centered around me competing. Still going to be competing next season. But this season, I'm going to have to take a back foot and watch these teams compete. Still very proud of the NA teams and the developments they've made. I feel at least a little bit responsible. I did my part to advance the NA meta. So naturally, the team I want to see win is Blackhand in North America. I like a lot of them. I think they're really cool guys. I think they're all talented. But I'm expecting big things from Japan, big things from EU. Obviously, I think Random Gaming's gonna have a great show out. I think Secret Ship's got an interesting gameplay. But I think teams like Revenant from India, Renaissance, I don't think ICLEN, I don't think any of these teams are worth sleeping on. XIS from Brazil, all these teams, I genuinely think any one of the 16 teams can outperform what people might be expecting of them. So what I want to know from you guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, who are you rooting for to win in Worlds? If you're in Twitch, let me know which team you're excited to see win. But in terms of this presentation, it would not be possible without a lot of different resources, whether it be the math cord relying on how game mechanics work, my girlfriend Palace Blue, who's done a lot of the art for the stream, a lot of the art for this presentation. And really big shout out to the mod team. All of them came together and put together a very wonderful document, which I'm actually going to show on stream right now as well, as long as there's nothing to dox on here. There isn't. This is what the mod team, all I did was fill out this first one here, and my mods, they came together and made an entire breakdown, gave me links to all the games, all in under a week. So shout out to them. The reason why I needed mods help was for stuff like this and more fun and exciting streams and content in the future coming out as well. So yeah, I don't know. Honestly, like, I have my favorites, but I genuinely think any team has the potential to, maybe not any team to win, but I think any team, any individual team has the potential to severely outperform their expectations. So yeah, let me know which teams you guys are rooting for, and we'll do a smaller debrief before the main event, but I'm gonna be live on August 19th. Is that when it starts, guys? So Friday, which is, yeah, August 19th at 4 a.m. Eastern, and the 20th, which will be day 2. You can see my schedule in the Twitch bio below. It's posted on YouTube. It's in my Discord. But yeah, I'm going to be watching both days of Worlds live. We'll put any interesting games that I end up casting. Me and Nino will put them on YouTube as well. If there is an official schedule, someone can link that. That would be helpful as well. But yeah, I'll be watching all the games live on stream. If you want to check in, the official streams are going to be there, but if you want like a pro player's perspective, or you want a chat where you can hang out, join me on my watch party. I'll be live on Twitch, and I'll also have some content afterwards on YouTube as well. Agreed? Agreed.